I think that Tennessee fans should be more optimistic about this upcoming season than last year. And that sounds crazy because optimism was at an all-time high. Now, I'm going to use a little hindsight's 2020, and that's going to factor into my decision, Caleb. So feel free to call me out. But you go into last season with a quarterback situation. You don't know Nico's going to be great. We think he was developed in a lab for Josh Heupel's system, but that didn't work out. You go into this season with a quarterback situation as well. So that's almost a wash. I mean, you could say Nico's more talented if you want to, but you're still going in to a season with an unknown at quarterback. And I will say this, until I see a quarterback get it done at the SEC level, I'm not convinced by his recruiting ranking. All right, so let's look on the other side of the ball. Caleb, given what you know, how much better do you feel about Tim Banks this year than you did last year heading into the season? Wasn't he a big concern like this time last year?
Not for me, and not for you either. He was a big concern for me in 2022, but I watched enough of what he was doing and things he was dealing with and what I saw with the NFL talent that I actually was more impressed. This is going to be crazy for me to say. As good as Tennessee's defense was last year, in hindsight, I was more impressed by the work Tim Banks did in 2022 when Josh Heupel ran that tempo so insanely. Tim Banks had nobody that could play on the back seven and somehow had to figure out a way to get around and round it into out blitz packages and just did what he could. So but I do have faith in him, put it that way. I still have a ton of faith in him as a coach. In terms of the overall question, I got to say, if you were to ask me, am I more optimistic about the future than I was at the end of the Ohio State game for Tennessee? I'm going to say yes. But am I more optimistic than I was for Tennessee going into last year? No, but you have to remember, you're talking to the guy that thought Nico was created in a lab for Josh Heupel, that this was like a special. You're talking to the guy who thought you were witnessing Tim Tebow going to Urban Meyer or Tommy Frazier going to Tom Osborne or Cam Newton going to Gus Malzahn.
Yes. That's you were high. You're high. There's no, you were Cheech and Chong high. There's no question about it. So, I mean, and I get that. And I probably wasn't that far off. I'm just always kind of the wait and see moment when I see quarterbacks. And I saw Nico pretty early, and I probably made excuses for him to some extent. But let's turn to the offensive tackles. The offensive tackles were a big issue for the first half of the season. They should be much better. With David Sanders on the right, they tend to protect those right guys, and I think he's going to be just fine. And then on the left side, Lance Hurd with another year under his belt, and I continually hear incredible things about him. So your Achilles heel on offense was offensive tackle. You should be better there. I also like William Satterwhite at center. I think Mo's going to be fine, and then I think they'll find someone to fill in. But you don't come back with usually 5 elite offensive linemen, and I think Tennessee has the potential to have 3 in Satterwhite, Sanders, and Hurd. Now, let's take it to the outside, and I know you're very high on Tennessee's receivers. Listen, if Mike Matthews lives up to what he looks like, he's going to be that special receiver that you trot in front of SEC media days in 2026, just like Cedric Tillman.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I think Mike Matthews, look, let's talk about Tennessee last year for a minute. You're right. Freshmen don't really make it in Josh Heupel's system as a receiver quite the way you would hope. They didn't have an answer for the fact that Brew McCoy wasn't 100% at wideout last year. They just didn't. And I've talked about that for a while. Brew McCoy was supposed to be their go-to receiver to dictate coverage. He wasn't 100. He never fully recovered from that broken leg, evidenced by him medically retiring. On the other side, Dante Thornton also was coming off a season-ending injury, but Dante Thornton is only as good as the number one wideout is to dictate coverage, and Squirrel White was playing with a separated shoulder. So I do think that when you...
And his eye probably elsewhere. I mean, we know, I don't want to get too much into the psychology of it, but can you imagine if you're on a team and you love that team and those are your brothers, but by the same token, we all know it's been widely reported Squirrel does have a son, and you're thinking about maybe this other job, Florida State, provides some more financial security. I I think that has happened a lot, and I hope it's limited a little bit by the fact that universities are going to be affected by, they're going to be limited by how much they can spend. You mentioned the NIL thing, but I think that's a factor too.
Oh, I definitely think so. Squirrel White's head was a little bit elsewhere too. Now, some people, when they have a kid, they take it the opposite approach. Robert Meacham had a little girl, I believe, didn't he, when he was at Tennessee? And Robert Meacham used that to make an All-American season at Tennessee, funny enough. And so that was that. I think he still has the record for the most receiving yards in a year in 2006. But you are right.
I don't want to knock Squirrel if he's thinking in his mind, and I don't know the numbers, but if he's thinking Tennessee's paying $100,000 a year and Florida State wants to pay $300,000 a year, I mean, how can that not enter your thinking? Because tampering's going on. How can that not enter your thinking in the middle of the season?
Oh, definitely. Particularly when look, I just had a newborn. It's really, it's easy to think down the line when I get this big money elsewhere, but kind of when you got a newborn or a little kid, kind of need that money right now to take care of them.
And how about figure this in too? Not to get sidetracked on Squirrel White, but you factor into hey, I'm not going to be playing against elite corners, slot receiver defenders in the ACC. I could put up way bigger numbers and make myself look better for the NFL. I mean, it's as much as I'm an SEC guy, I have trouble knocking his decision on really any level.
No, yeah, I can't really knock it either. If he got more money, he got the money. He's got to go with it. There's so many reasons he was smart to do what he did. But in general, with all that in mind, Braylon Staley will be better in the slot this year. I think Chris Brazzell, fully locked into the number 2 wideout spot, will be fine and will have more chances at touches, and also playing opposite Mike Matthews. Mike Matthews, if you were to ask me, would a healthy Brew McCoy last year be better than Mike Matthews is this year, I would have said yes. But Mike Matthews this year, I don't see how he's not better than the Brew McCoy we saw last year, who just wasn't the same receiver.
Nope, I'm with you. I mean, I hate it for him. Also hate it for the way football is. They were too loyal to him. He should have been benched. I've seen it have to happen before with guys that suffered serious injuries. And I know that Josh Heupel didn't want to do that. Today's tough question. Let's make it a poll question. How does your optimism, you put it in your words, how does your optimism compare to last year? Because we know more about last year. And I'm well aware that this is not a fair way of looking at it. But I know that Nico wasn't perfect for Josh Heupel. I know that Brew McCoy was not explosive. So I go into this season, and there are going to be potential pitfalls, but I don't see them yet. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Yeah, and if you want to make one of the options too, Dave's on the wacky weed or something, to be as excited about this upcoming season as he was last year, you can do that. I always wondered about the Nico drama. I always wondered if that would be a negative. But Caleb, how did we decide to set up the poll question?
I actually kept it pretty simple. Are you more or less optimistic about Tennessee entering this year than you were entering last year? And I'll give you the results in a little while, but let's just say people don't think you're on the wacky train, believe it or not.
Okay. Well, I like that because, listen, what did you have in 1997 through no fault of his own? You had the distraction that was Peyton Manning. He was the one who everybody wanted to interview. They didn't want to interview this really good linebacker named Al Wilson. They wanted to interview Peyton Manning. They didn't want to interview this guy or that guy or Deion Grant or Fred White. They want to interview Peyton Manning. And he didn't mean to be the center of strife, controversy, whatever you want to call it, but he was. And especially because there was an ongoing quarterback competition at the time. So I think Nico was a little bit more strong-handed in it. I don't think he minded being a part of the problem, a part of the distraction that was on this team. But you look what happened the following year in '98, Caleb, and I happened to write a book about it. It just, they wanted to prove everybody wrong. And I can't help but wonder, I don't know how good Joey Aguilar is going to be, but I can't help but wonder that this team's going to be uber motivated to prove people wrong.
Yes, no, I agree. And you know, we talk about the similarities of that 97 to 98 versus 2024 to 2025. 2024 had all the hype with Nico, 97 had all the hype with Peyton. 2024 ended with a 42 to 17 thumping at Ohio State. 97 ended with a 42 to 17 thumping against Nebraska. In both cases, a thumping loss to the national champion. The quarterback left after the end of the season. So I mean, there were just so many similarities. And by the way, they opened the next season against Syracuse, and both instances are opening this year against Syracuse also. So that's just a funny one. But you're right. And there's a lot of talk. I think the thing about the 98 team and that was so interesting was so many all SEC players had departed, but people forgot that. And you know, you talk about it, the golden trio we always talk about: Kosi Coleman, Deion Grant, Jamal Lewis, all part of the 97 class. And what's not talked about enough is that 97 Tennessee class on just pure talent may have been the greatest recruiting class in history. And they were all about to be sophomores and they all had a year of experience under the belt and were ready to play college ball by 98. And that was a huge difference.
Here's the other thing too, and I don't want this to sound like a Nico bashing thing, but did he really recruit for Tennessee?
No, he didn't. He didn't. And by the way, he was not much of a leader. We know George McIntyre was more. And by the way, going to the defensive side, because people are going to ask about the elephant in the room, Jermon McCoy's ACL tear. Colton Hood coming in as a Colorado transfer, you brought this up. Great analogy. It's the NFL or the college football version of a 10-day contract where you sign a guy just to fill a void until the other guy gets fully healthy. But Colton Hood can fill that void for a month. And not to mention the fact that they're going to be better at linebacker. Jeremiah Thielander and Arian Carter, both with more experience, both coming back. Now Arian Carter ready to blossom into an All-American. And on the defensive line, you got a lot of guys coming back. Plus, yes, I know James Pierce is gone, but Joshua Josephs, Jordan Ross, you got guys at the edge rusher position that you should still be fine there.
Do me a favor here for a moment, if you don't mind. Look at pull up the two deep for Tennessee headed into Josh Heupel's first year would have been 21, correct?
Right.
Okay. Pull up the two deep there. See if there's a Jordan Ross. See if there's a Jackson Moy. I'm going to go ahead and bet not. I'm going to bet there's a one or two players, but I bet when you talk overall depth, it's just different. I don't know. Maybe it was the way the sun hit me and the vitamin D this morning. But I just have a sense of optimism about this Tennessee football team that I didn't have previously. After I have been doing some research, I do like the way Joey Aguilar throws the ball. I think Peyton Lewis can take Tennessee's rushing game to a different level. And remember this, Tennessee's offensive line was largely rebuilt last year. So they've shown a propensity to be able to replace guys up front and still run the ball.
Yeah, so pulling it up now, look, Tennessee did have a Jordan Ross / James Pierce because they had Tyler Barron and Byron Young in 2021. Byron Young specifically, but the rest of the defensive line didn't mesh up. I think the real difference between 2021 and now on defense, Dave, is linebacker. Jawan Mitchell and Jeremy Banks in 2021 versus Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander. There's nothing to discuss. Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander are significantly more cut out for SEC football than Jawan.
Way different. Maybe the biggest reason for optimism on the entire team.
Oh, yeah. The linebackers they're not getting talked about enough. Arian Carter is a potential superstar, and Jeremiah Thielander can be really, really, really good. And
part of the reason they don't get more pub, especially Arian Carter, is they do the whole Leo thing where you can put your hand down if you want to. And then is he really a linebacker or is he a defensive end? I think they lose some credit for that from a lot of people.
Well, I think they also used them last year to try to add a little more complications to the coverage because they didn't blitz as much. And, you know, when you have a team that doesn't blitz a lot, the linebackers don't get a chance to rack up stats. I mean, the best example, Dave, is funny enough, that 2001 Tennessee team, John Chavis loved to blitz all the time. But when he had John Henderson and Albert Hainsworth, he wasn't about to bother blitzing anybody. There was no reason to.
No. And it's funny. David said this 2005 team reminds me of the 2001 Tennessee team up there. And he said he forgot Juwan Mitchell existed. He was pretty good. He would move people. I don't know if they have that kind of offensive line, but I think they've got a better one than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Tennessee also, we'll talk a little bit of football recruiting, and we'll take a look at the offensive line recruiting and where Tennessee is. We all know about David Sanders, but I want to go back a little bit and discuss what Tennessee's done on the offensive line, because Caleb, I think you would agree with this. You can get Joe Montana, Michael Irvin, Megatron, and if you don't have 5 guys to block up front for them, it ain't going to work.
Most of the time, except for Peyton Manning, who didn't have a good offensive line in the NFL ever and made up for it when he was with the Colts.
He got the ball out extremely quick.
He did. He got it out incredibly quick. He turned Jeff Saturday into a Pro Bowl center. All due respect to Jeff Saturday, that dude was never big enough to play in the NFL, but he was blocking for Peyton Manning.
Yeah, what about Dallas Clark?
Most overrated player Peyton Manning ever had as a teammate. Dallas Clark was a scrub, and Peyton Manning made him a Pro Bowler.
See, I thought Dallas Clark looked pretty athletic to me. I remember thinking that he had a lot of guys that were scrubbish, but I didn't think that was one. I like Dallas Clark.
Total scrub.
Dallas
Wrong.
Clark. This sounds awful. I thought he was more athletic and had better hips, and at one point, if Cowboys would have traded Jason Witten, I would have been okay.
Dallas Clark does not measure up to Jason Witten.
Okay, well, I like that you say that. It makes me feel better about it.
Not even close.
No, like Dallas Clark cheating with my wife or something.
Dallas Clark was on the level of Blair White, one of Peyton's receivers that he threw to. Like, Peyton Manning had I still maintain that Tom Brady had better options to throw to than Peyton Manning for most of his career. People think I'm crazy for saying that, but I would take Deion Branch over Marvin Harrison every day on Sunday. Every day and on Sunday. Marvin Harrison was a total product of Peyton.
Dylan, back to the Vols. I think we'll be better on the offensive line, but we can't ignore its patchwork. We got to hope they can find chemistry fast. That is very, very true. It was the second Miami kid that was not the Cuse kid, the Harrison kid. The next one was better.
Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne was better than Marvin Harrison, significantly so. That's the best. Reggie Wayne and Demaryius Thomas.
The ones you want to compare.
Yes. By the way, I love this quote from Dylan. This is so true. Dave loves hips.
I do. I tell you, I can watch a guy, and I've done it so much in evaluations. I can look at his hips, and if you were to block off the rest of his body, I could tell you if he's going to be a good football player.
He takes advice from Shakira. Hips don't lie.
The hips don't lie.